Kylie, I'm leaving you. I filed for divorce today. I love someone else. The words hit me like a slap across the face, disorienting me for a moment as I struggled to process what Todd had just said. What? You filed for divorce without telling me? I asked in disbelief, my voice shaking. How could he do this? Todd shrugged nonchalantly. I've moved out, and don't worry about the house, it's all taken care of. You're just not the wife I need anymore. My heart pounded in my chest, my anger and hurt swirling inside me like a raging storm. After 25 years of marriage, he was casually discarding me like yesterday's trash. I opened my mouth to respond, but the words caught in my throat. Todd's expression hardened. Look, I'm not going to argue about this. It's done. I've met someone new, someone who actually understands me. His callous dismissal stung, but it also ignited a fire within me. I wasn't going to let him off that easily. Who is she? I demanded, my voice steadier now. He hesitated for a moment, then sighed. Her name is Emily Reed. She's younger, more ambitious, and she actually supports my dreams. I recoiled as if he had physically struck me. Emily Reed. The name meant nothing to me, but the implication was clear. He had been having an affair behind my back, and now he was throwing away our marriage for this younger woman. Anger coursed through my veins, overriding the initial shock. How long has this been going on? I asked through gritted teeth. Todd shrugged again, his indifference only fueling my fury. A while. Look, I'm not going to stand here and justify myself to you. It's over, Kylie. Accept it and move on. With those words, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing in the middle of our living room, numb with disbelief and rage. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to lash out at the injustice of it all, but I found myself paralyzed, unable to do anything but watch as the life I had known crumbled around me. As the front door slammed shut behind Todd, a single thought crystallized in my mind. I would not let him get away with this. I would find out the truth, and I would make him pay for what he had done to me, to us. The war had just begun. After Todd left, I sank onto the couch, my mind racing. How had I not seen this coming? As the initial shock wore off, memories began to surface. The late nights at the office, the unexplained absences, the distance that had grown between us over the years. Had it all been leading up to this moment? I thought back to my dreams of becoming an architect, how I had put them on hold to start a family with Todd. At the time, it had seemed like the right choice, but now I couldn't help but wonder if I had sacrificed too much. The sound of my phone ringing jolted me out of my thoughts. It was Leslie, my best friend from college. We had drifted apart over the years, but she had always been there for me when I needed her. Kylie, is everything okay? You sound upset. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my voice. It's Todd. He filed for divorce. Says he's been having an affair with some younger woman named Emily Reed. There was a pause on the other end of the line. Oh, Kylie, I'm so sorry. That must be devastating. I felt tears welling up in my eyes. I never saw it coming. How could I have been so blind? Don't blame yourself, Leslie said firmly. This is on him, not you. He made the choice to betray your trust and throw away your marriage. I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. You're right, and I'm not going to let him get away with it. What do you mean? I'm going to find out everything I can about this Emily Reed, and I'm going to make sure Todd pays for what he's done, I said, my voice hardening with resolve. Leslie hesitated. Kylie, I understand you're hurting, but revenge isn't going to make you feel better in the long run. Maybe not, I admitted, but I can't just sit back and let him walk all over me. I need to do something. There was a pause, and then Leslie sighed. All right, just be careful, okay? Don't do anything reckless. I won't, I promised, even though I wasn't entirely sure what I was capable of at that moment. After hanging up with Leslie, I sat for a long time, staring at the wall, replaying the events of the day in my mind. Todd's words echoed in my head, each one a knife twisting in my heart. As the anger and hurt swirled inside me, I made a decision. I was going to find out everything I could about this Emily Reed, and I was going to make sure Todd paid for what he had done to me, to our family. It was time to take action. Over the next few days, I became consumed by the need to uncover the truth about Todd's affair. I scoured his email and bank records, looking for any clues that might lead me to this mysterious Emily Reed. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of searching, I struck gold. A charge for a fancy restaurant downtown, one that Todd and I had never been to. I recognized the name and address immediately. It had to be where he was meeting her. That night, I waited outside the restaurant, my heart pounding in my chest. I wasn't sure what I was going to do or say when I saw them together, but I knew I needed to confront them, to see it with my own eyes. Sure enough, just after 8 o'clock, Todd's car pulled up, and he emerged, looking sharp in a suit and tie. A few moments later, a younger woman joined him, her arm linked through his. My stomach twisted into knots as I realized this must be Emily Reed. They disappeared inside the restaurant, and I waited, my anger and hurt simmering just below the surface. After what felt like an eternity, they finally emerged, laughing and holding hands. I steeled myself and stepped out from the shadows. So this is her, huh? The woman you threw away our marriage for? Todd froze, his expression shifting from shock to anger in an instant. Kylie, what the hell are you doing here? I think the better question is, what are you doing with her? I spat, gesturing towards Emily, who looked utterly bewildered. Kylie, this isn't what it looks like, Todd began, but I cut him off. Save it, Todd. I know exactly what this is. You've been having an affair, and now you're leaving me for this girl. Emily's eyes widened, and she looked at Todd in disbelief. Is that true? You're married? Todd sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. It's complicated, Emily. Kylie and we've been over for a long time. Don't feed her those lies, I snarled. We were fine until you decided to throw it all away for a pretty face. Emily shook her head, her expression a mixture of hurt and anger. You know what? I don't want any part of this. She turned and stormed off, leaving Todd and me alone on the sidewalk. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Todd rounded on me, his eyes blazing with fury. Are you happy now, Kylie? You've ruined everything as usual. I stepped closer, my hands balled into fists at my sides. Don't you dare try to pin this on me, Todd. You're the one who betrayed our vows, our family. You're the one who threw it all away for a fling with some younger woman. Todd scoffed, shaking his head. You just don't get it, do you? This isn't about Emily, it's about you and me. We've been miserable for years, and you were too blind to see it. His words stung, but I refused to back down. Well, congratulations, Todd. You've made your bed, and now you can lie in it. Alone. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there on the sidewalk. As I climbed into my car, tears streamed down my face, but I also felt a sense of relief. Relief that I had finally seen the truth, and relief that I had taken the first step towards getting the justice I deserved. The battle lines had been drawn, and I was ready for war. In the aftermath of my confrontation with Todd and Emily, I found myself retreating into a dark place. The sense of betrayal and anger burned like a fire inside me, clouding my thoughts and consuming my every waking moment. It was during this time that Leslie reached out to me again. We hadn't spoken since before my discovery of Todd's affair, and her call was a welcome reprieve from the turmoil that had become my life. Kylie, how are you holding up? She asked, her voice laced with concern. I sighed heavily. Not great, if I'm being honest. I caught Todd with the other woman, and it was ugly. Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. That must have been devastating. You have no idea, I replied bitterly. The things he said to me, the way he tried to justify his actions, it was like I didn't even know him anymore. There was a pause on the other end of the line, and then Leslie spoke again, her tone more hesitant this time. Kylie, there's something else I need to tell you. My heart sank. What is it? I recently started seeing someone new. His name is David, and he's been wonderful, but... I felt a knot forming in the pit of my stomach. But what? There have been some red flags, Leslie continued. Little things that remind me of how Todd used to treat you. I'm worried I might be walking into another toxic situation. My blood ran cold. The thought of my best friend going through the same kind of hell I was enduring was unbearable. What kind of red flags? I asked, my voice low and serious. Leslie hesitated, and then she began to recount the little ways in which David's behavior had started to mirror Todd's. The occasional dismissive comment, the subtle attempts at control, the gaslighting when she tried to voice her concerns. As I listened, my anger towards Todd only grew stronger. How dare he treat me, treat us, like that? How dare he try to manipulate and control the people I loved most in this world? Leslie, you need to get out of that relationship, I said firmly. Don't make the same mistakes I did. Don't ignore the warning signs. There was a long pause, and then Leslie spoke again, her voice thick with emotion. You're right, Kylie. I can't let myself be blindsided again, not after everything you've been through. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. Todd had hurt me in the most profound way imaginable, but he wouldn't get away with it, not this time. Leslie, I need your help, I said, my voice steely with determination. I'm going to take Todd down, and I want you by my side. There was no hesitation this time. Whatever you need, Kylie. I'm with you, 100%. As we began to lay out our plans for revenge, a sense of purpose washed over me. Todd had made a grave mistake in underestimating the strength of our friendship, and he was going to pay dearly for it. The tide was turning, and this time, I was the one holding all the cards. With Leslie's help, I began to piece together a clearer picture of Todd's manipulation and deceit. It turned out that his affair with Emily was just the tip of the iceberg. He had been emotionally and financially abusive towards me for years, slowly chipping away at my self-worth and independence. As Leslie recounted her own experiences with David, she realized that he had been exhibiting similar patterns of behavior, ones that she had initially brushed off or rationalized away. But now, with the benefit of hindsight and my perspective, the truth became painfully clear. I can't believe I almost let myself fall into that trap again, Leslie said, her voice trembling with a mixture of anger and relief. If you hadn't been there to open my eyes, Kylie, I don't know where I'd be right now. I reached across the table and squeezed her hand. That's what friends are for. We've got each other's backs, no matter what. A steely determination settled over us as we began to formulate our plan. We knew that taking down Todd wouldn't be easy. He was a master manipulator, and he had a way of twisting the truth to suit his own agenda. But we also knew that we had something he didn't: each other. We need evidence, Leslie said, her brow furrowed in thought, concrete proof of his misdeeds that he can't talk his way out of. I nodded, already formulating a plan. I'll hire a private investigator to dig into his financial records, his dealings at work, anything that could be used against him. Leslie's eyes lit up. And I can continue to play dumb with David, feed his ego, and make him think he's got me wrapped around his finger. That way, he'll let his guard down and reveal more of his true colors. A slow smile spread across my face. It's perfect. We'll gather all the evidence we need, and then we'll strike when he least expects it. Over the next few weeks, our plan fell into motion. The private investigator uncovered a trail of financial misconduct and shady business dealings that would have been enough to ruin Todd's career and reputation on their own. And Leslie, bless her heart, played the role of the doting, clueless girlfriend to perfection, all the while secretly documenting David's increasingly toxic behavior. As the pieces fell into place, a sense of grim satisfaction washed over me. Todd had always underestimated the bond between Leslie and me, thinking that he could pit us against each other or manipulate us into submission. But he was wrong. Our friendship was stronger than his lies, our determination more powerful than his deception. And soon, he would learn that lesson the hard way. As Leslie and I pored over the evidence we had gathered against Todd and David, a sense of grim determination settled over us. We knew that taking them down wouldn't be easy, but we were ready to do whatever it took to see justice served. That's when Megan, my daughter, got involved. "Mom, what's going on?" she asked, eyes wide with concern. "You and Aunt Leslie have been holed up in here for days, and you both look like you're plotting a heist or something." I exchanged a glance with Leslie, silently debating how much to tell her. In the end, I decided that honesty was the best policy. Megan was an adult, and she deserved to know the truth. "Sit down, honey," I said, gesturing to the couch. "There's something we need to tell you." Over the next hour, Leslie and I laid out the entire sordid tale: Todd's affair, his emotional and financial abuse, and our plan to take him down once and for all. Megan listened intently, her expression shifting from shock to anger as she processed the information. "That son of a bitch," she muttered when we finished, her hands clenched into fists. "How could he do that to you, Mom? To all of us?" I reached out and placed a hand on her arm, offering what little comfort I could. "I know, sweetie. Believe me, I know." Megan took a deep breath, her eyes blazing with determination. Well, count me in. Whatever you need, I'm here to help. A slow smile spread across Leslie's face. Actually, there might be something you can do for us. It turned out that Megan's position as a high-level executive at a major tech company gave her access to resources that could prove invaluable in our quest for revenge. With her help, we were able to dig even deeper into Todd's financial misdeeds, uncovering a web of fraud and corruption that stretched back years. This is bigger than we thought, Megan said grimly, scrolling through the damning evidence on her laptop. If we play our cards right, we could not only ruin his reputation, but also have him facing criminal charges. A sense of vindictive satisfaction washed over me. After everything Todd had put us through, the idea of seeing him face real consequences for his actions was almost too good to be true. Almost. As the three of us put the finishing touches on our plan, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and gratitude, not just for the strength and resilience of my daughter and my best friend, but also for the unwavering bond that had carried us through even the darkest of times. Todd had made a grave mistake in underestimating the power of our love and loyalty, and now he was going to pay the ultimate price. The day of reckoning arrived sooner than any of us expected. Todd had scheduled a meeting at his office, no doubt to discuss some shady business deal or another. Little did he know, we had been tipped off, and we had a surprise waiting for him. As Leslie, Megan, and I made our way into the building, I could feel the adrenaline coursing through my veins. This was it, the moment we had been planning for, the moment when Todd would finally face the consequences of his actions. We reached his office, and I took a deep breath before knocking firmly on the door. "Come in," Todd's voice called out, oblivious to the storm that was about to be unleashed. I pushed open the door, and we filed in one by one. Todd's eyes widened in surprise as he took us in, his gaze lingering on Leslie and Megan. "Kylie, what's going on here?" he demanded, his brow furrowed in confusion. I stepped forward, my hands trembling with a potent mix of nerves and anticipation. "We know, Todd. We know everything." His expression hardened, and he opened his mouth to respond, but I cut him off. "Don't bother denying it. We have proof. Proof of your affair, your emotional abuse, your financial misdeeds. It's all right here." I held up a thick manila envelope, stuffed to the brim with damning evidence. Todd's face paled, and he glanced around the room, his eyes darting from one of us to the next. "This is ridiculous," he sputtered. "You can't just barge in here and make these kinds of accusations." "Oh, but we can," Leslie chimed in, her voice dripping with disdain. "And we have. You see, Todd, you made a big mistake underestimating us. You thought you could play us against each other, manipulate us and control us like you always have." Megan stepped forward, her expression steely. "But you were wrong. We're stronger than your lies, stronger than your deceit, and we're not going to let you get away with it anymore." As if on cue, the door opened again, and a pair of security guards entered, flanked by a man in a crisp suit, no doubt a lawyer or a law enforcement officer. "Todd Parker?" the man said, his voice grave. "You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, and a host of other financial crimes." Todd's eyes widened in panic, and he whirled around to face me, his expression a twisted mask of rage and disbelief. You did this? You're ruining my life." I met his gaze unflinchingly, a sense of profound satisfaction settling over me. "No, Todd, you ruined your own life the moment you decided to betray your family and break the law. This is just the consequences catching up to you." As the security guards moved in to apprehend him, Todd struggled and fought, hurling insults and threats at us. But it was too late. The wheels of justice were already in motion. Outside, a crowd had begun to gather, alerted by the commotion and the presence of the authorities. And as Todd was led out in handcuffs, his expensive suit rumpled, and his face contorted in fury, Megan pulled out her phone and began live-streaming the whole thing. Within minutes, the story had gone viral. Todd's misdeeds and downfall laid bare for the world to see. His reputation was in tatters, his career in ruins, all because he had underestimated the power of 3 determined women who refused to be victims any longer. As I watched him being loaded into the back of a police car, a profound sense of closure washed over me. The nightmare was finally over, and justice had been served. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free. In the aftermath of Todd's dramatic downfall, life as we knew it changed completely. The criminal charges and financial repercussions left him practically destitute, his once lavish lifestyle reduced to a mere shadow of its former self. As for me, Leslie, and Megan, a profound sense of relief and vindication washed over us. We had taken our power back, refusing to be victims of Todd's manipulation and lies any longer. And in the process, we had forged an unbreakable bond that would carry us through whatever challenges life threw our way. It was during this time that Leslie approached me with an idea, one that would not only help us move forward, but also allow us to reclaim our passions and dreams. "Kylie, do you remember how you always wanted to be an architect?" she asked one day over coffee. I nodded, a wistful smile tugging at my lips. "Of course, but that was a long time ago before." My voice trailed off, the painful memories of sacrificing my ambitions for Todd still raw. Leslie reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Well, why don't you go back to school? It's never too late to chase your dreams." At first, the idea seemed preposterous. I was in my mid-40s, with a lifetime of baggage and responsibilities weighing me down. How could I possibly start over now? But then I remembered the strength and determination that had carried us through our ordeal with Todd. If we could take down a man like that, surely I could find the courage to pursue my long-abandoned passion. "You know what? You're right," I said, a sense of excitement bubbling up within me. "I'm going to do it. I'm going to become an architect, just like I always wanted." Leslie's face split into a wide grin, her eyes shining with pride. "That's my girl. And you know what? I have an idea that could help us both." It turned out that Leslie had always harbored a love for interior design, a passion that had been stifled by her own toxic relationship with David. Together, we hatched a plan to start our own firm, combining my architectural skills with her eye for design. With Megan's help and support, we navigated the bureaucratic hurdles and secured the necessary licenses and permits. Before we knew it, our dream had become a reality. A thriving business built on the foundation of our unwavering friendship and resilience. As the months passed, our client list grew, and our reputation for excellence spread like wildfire. We poured our hearts and souls into every project, infusing each design with a piece of ourselves. The strength we had found in our darkest moments, the determination to create something beautiful from the ashes of our pain. And through it all, we never lost sight of the lessons we had learned from our ordeal with Todd. We knew the value of loyalty, of trust, and of never underestimating the power of a few committed individuals to change the course of their lives. As for Todd, his fate was sealed, a cautionary tale of what happens when greed and ego consume a person's soul. He faded into obscurity, left to grapple with the consequences of his actions while we soared to new heights, unburdened by his toxic presence. In the end, our story was one of redemption, of finding the courage to chase our dreams and build a life on our own terms. And as I looked around at the incredible women who had become my family, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, stronger, wiser, and infinitely more resilient than before.
The ultrasound image trembled in my hands, its grainy black and white shapes holding all my dreams. 2 heartbeats, mine racing, and somewhere in that fuzzy constellation, my baby's steady rhythm. After 3 years of trying, of temperature charts and disappointments, there it was. Life. I want a divorce. Jason's voice cut through my moment like a blade. I looked up from the image, certain I'd misheard. My husband stood by our bedroom window, his back to me, shoulders rigid beneath his expensive suit. "What did you say?" "You heard me, Fiona." He turned, and I saw nothing of the man I'd married in his eyes. I never wanted this. Any of it. The image crumpled slightly in my grip. Any of what? A baby. A family. This whole domestic fantasy you've been chasing. He gestured vaguely at our bedroom, at the home we'd built together. I played along because it made you happy, but I can't do it anymore. My throat closed up. Played along? For 8 years? Look, I've got a chance at partnership. Real partnership, not just senior associate. I can't be tied down with a kid right now, It's not in my plans. I pressed my hand against my still flat stomach. Our child isn't in your plans? Don't make this harder than it needs to be. He loosened his tie, a nervous habit I'd once found endearing. I've already talked to my lawyer. You can keep the house. I'll pay support, whatever's fair. But I'm done playing house. The room spun slightly. I sat on the edge of our bed, the same bed where we'd made this baby, where he'd held me through failed attempts and crushing disappointments. When what? When did you decide our marriage was just playing house? He checked his watch, impatient. Does it matter? The papers will be ready tomorrow. I'm staying at the Marriott until I find a place. Tomorrow? The word came out as a whisper. You've planned this. Of course I planned it. I'm not an idiot. He grabbed a pre-packed suitcase from the closet, one I hadn't even noticed was there. I knew you'd get emotional about this. Emotional. Like my feelings were an inconvenience, a feminine weakness he had to manage. I smoothed out the ultrasound image, trying to focus on that tiny heartbeat. Who is she? His pause told me everything. That's not important. 8 years of marriage, and you can't even give me the truth? Fine. Her name is Lily. She understands my ambitions. She doesn't need this. He waved at me, at my stomach, at our life together. I stood up, surprising myself with how steady my legs felt. Get out. Fiona. Get out. Each word was a bullet. Your lawyer can call mine. But right now, get out of my house. He grabbed his suitcase, pausing at the door. I never meant to hurt you. I laughed, a harsh sound that scared even me. Yes, you did. You meant to hurt me less, maybe. But you knew exactly what you were doing. After he left, I sat in the silence of our bedroom, my bedroom now, and looked at the ultrasound again. My baby. My child. The tears finally came, but with them came something else, steel in my spine, ice in my veins. It's just us now, little one, I whispered to the image. But I promise you this, you will never doubt that you're wanted. You will never wonder if you're enough. And your father? I took a deep breath. Your father will learn that some games have consequences. I placed the ultrasound on my nightstand and picked up my phone. My parents would be my first call. They'd always warned me about Jason's charm hiding something darker. Then my lawyer. Then my doctor. I had a life to rebuild, and a child to protect. The game wasn't over. It was just beginning. My parents' kitchen smelled exactly as it had when I was a child: cinnamon, coffee, and my mother's endless supply of fresh-baked bread. The familiar scent should have been comforting. Instead, it made my throat tight with unshed tears. He did what? My father's coffee cup hit the table hard enough to splash. That spineless little Thomas. My mother's hand covered his, a gentle restraint. She turned to me, her eyes sharp despite her soft voice. When did this happen, sweetheart? Yesterday. I traced the wood grain of their kitchen table, the same one I'd done my homework on decades ago. He had it all planned out. Lawyer, new apartment, everything. And the baby? Mother's grip tightened on father's hand. Doesn't want anything to do with either of us. The words tasted bitter. He's got his career to think about, apparently. Father pushed back from the table, pacing the kitchen like a caged bear. 8 years. 8 years we welcomed that man into our family, and this is how he... Thomas, please. Mother's voice carried that steel I remembered from childhood arguments. This isn't helping. I pulled out the ultrasound image, already creased from constant handling, and placed it on the table. Mother's breath caught. Oh, darling. She moved to my side, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Your room is exactly as you left it. I can't stay here. The words came out faster than I intended. I mean, I appreciate it, but... Nonsense. Father stopped pacing. The house is too big for just us anyway. And you'll need help with the baby. I need to stand on my own feet. I straightened my spine, meeting their concerned gazes. Jason's offering to let me keep the house. With the divorce settlement and my savings, I can manage the mortgage. The house? Mother's tone sharpened. The house you both chose? Where you plan to raise your family? Darling, every room will remind you of him. She was right, of course. I'd spent the night staring at the ceiling, remembering every moment, every promise, every lie. Then I'll sell it. Start fresh somewhere else. You don't have to decide everything today. Mother squeezed my shoulder. Stay with us for a while. Clear your head. A knock at the front door interrupted my response. Father went to answer it, his footsteps heavy with purpose. Margaret? His voice carried an odd note. You might want to come here. Mother exchanged a look with me before heading to the door. I followed, curious despite myself. Lily Carter stood on our porch, looking nothing like the polished photos I'd found on social media last night. Her mascara was smeared, her designer clothes rumpled. I'm so sorry, she blurted before anyone could speak. I didn't know, I swear I didn't know he was married when we met. He told me you were separated, that the divorce was almost final. How long? The question came out calmer than I felt. She flinched. 6 months. 6 months. While I was tracking ovulation and praying for a miracle, my husband was. I pressed a hand to my stomach, suddenly nauseated. I found out about the baby from his phone. Lily's voice cracked. He left it unlocked, and I saw the messages from his lawyer. About the divorce, about you being pregnant. I couldn't. I had to. You had to what? Mother's voice could have frozen hell. Tell you I'm sorry. And warn you. Lily glanced over her shoulder nervously. He's not just leaving. He's transferring all his assets. Moving them offshore. He's planning to leave me with nothing. The pieces clicked into place. The house offer, the quick divorce. He's running. Father's hand gripped the doorframe. Over my dead body. I studied Lily, young, beautiful, exactly Jason's type. But there was something in her eyes, something familiar. The same betrayal I felt burning in my chest. Thank you, I said quietly. For telling me. She nodded once, then hurried back to her car. We watched her drive away in silence. Well, Mother said finally. I believe I'll make some more coffee. We have planning to do. I followed them back to the kitchen, my mind racing. Jason thought he could discard us like unwanted baggage. He was about to learn how wrong he was. The game wasn't just beginning. It was changing entirely. The box of memories sat on my bedroom floor like a time bomb. 8 years of photographs, letters, and mementos, all lies wrapped in pretty paper. My hands shook as I lifted the lid. My phone buzzed. Another message from Jason's lawyer. I ignored it, just like I'd ignored the last 6. Let them wait. I had more pressing matters to attend to. The first photo showed our wedding day. Jason's perfect smile, my radiant happiness. I remembered the photographer commenting on how photogenic we were, how in love we looked. Now I could see what I'd missed then, the calculated gleam in Jason's eyes, the way his hand gripped my waist like a possession. The doorbell rang. I ignored that too. Deeper in the box, I found the fertility clinic receipts. 3 years of treatments, each one more expensive than the last. Each one paid for from my inheritance. While Jason's salary went to investing in our future. I wondered now what, or who, that future had really included. The doorbell rang again, more insistent this time. Go away. I shouted, knowing they couldn't hear me upstairs. But the ringing continued, followed by heavy knocking. Cursing, I stormed downstairs, ready to tell Jason's lawyer exactly where they could shove their settlement papers. But when I yanked open the door, it wasn't a lawyer standing there. It was Henry Carter, Lily's father. Miss Blake. His police training showed in his stance, in the careful way he assessed me. May I come in? There are things you need to know. I should have said no. Should have shut the door and gone back to my box of lies. Instead, I stepped aside. Henry moved through my house like he was cataloging evidence, his eyes taking in every detail. Lily told me she came to see you. Yesterday. I crossed my arms. She seemed upset. She should be. She's not the first. He turned to face me. There were others before her. Before you, even. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. What? Jason Blake has a pattern. Henry's voice carried the weight of certainty. He finds women with money or potential. Convinces them to invest in his schemes. Then he disappears with everything. A laugh bubbled up, bitter as poison. Let me guess, offshore accounts? Among other things. Henry pulled out his phone, showing me a series of documents. I'd been tracking him since he started dating Lily. His previous victims never pressed charges, too embarrassed, too afraid of scandal. But you're different. Because I'm pregnant. Because you have proof. He gestured around the house. Financial records. Joint accounts. And most importantly, you have witnesses to his character and behavior. My mind raced. Lily. She's willing to testify. About the affair, about his plans to leave the country. Henry's expression hardened. He's done this to 5 other women, Miss Blake. 5 lives destroyed because no one stopped him. I sank onto the couch, my hand instinctively covering my stomach. Why are you telling me this? Because my daughter made a mistake getting involved with him, but she's trying to make it right. And because you're in a position to end this cycle. He sat across from me. But we need to move fast. Before he transfers everything overseas. Upstairs, my box of memories waited. 8 years of carefully constructed lies, all leading to this moment. What do you need me to do? File charges. Today. My old partner handles financial crimes. He can freeze Jason's accounts before he moves anything else. I thought of the ultrasound picture, of the baby who would never know their father's love. Of the other women who'd trusted Jason, only to be left with nothing. Okay. I stood up, steel replacing the shock in my spine. Let's end this. Henry nodded, already dialing his phone. As he spoke to his former partner, I climbed back upstairs to my box of memories. One by one, I fed the photos into the fireplace, watching Jason's perfect smile turn to ash. The game had changed again. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about justice, not just for me and my baby, but for all the women who'd come before. And this time, Jason wouldn't know what hit him until it was too late. The morning sickness hit just as I was reviewing resumes at my parents' kitchen table. 4 months pregnant and still no job. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd spent years building Jason's career, and now I couldn't even land an entry-level position. My phone buzzed. Henry Carter's name flashed on the screen. They've frozen his accounts, Henry said without preamble. But we were too late for some of it. He'd already moved close to 2 million offshore. The room spun, and not from morning sickness. 2 million. That's impossible. We never had that much. It wasn't just your money. His voice hardened. The other women, the investments he convinced them to make, he's been planning this for years. I gripped the edge of the table. What about the house? Mortgage to the hilt. He took out 3 equity loans in the past year alone. The perfect house, the perfect life, all built on quicksand. He knew. Even when we were trying for a baby, he knew he was leaving. A knock at the door interrupted Henry's response. My mother answered it, and I heard raised voices in the hallway. I need to go, I told Henry, ending the call as Jason stormed into the kitchen. What the hell did you do? His perfect facade had cracked, showing something ugly underneath. Do you have any idea what you've done? My mother appeared behind him, phone in hand. I'm calling the police. No. I stood, one hand protectively over my stomach. Let him speak. I want to hear his explanation. Explanation? Jason laughed, a harsh sound. You froze my accounts. Destroyed years of work. For what? Revenge? Justice. The word tasted sweet. For every woman you've conned. Every life you've ruined. His expression shifted, becoming the charming mask I'd fallen for years ago. Sweetheart, you don't understand. Those investments were legitimate. I was building something for us, for our future. Don't. My voice shook. Don't you dare pretend this was for us. Henry Carter showed me everything. Henry Carter? Jason's mask slipped again. What does Lily's father have to do with this? He's a retired detective. Specialized in financial crimes. I watched the color drain from Jason's face. Did you know that? Did you check before you started dating his daughter? You stupid bitch. He stepped toward me, hands clenched. You have no idea what you've done. My mother moved between us. Get out of my house. This isn't over. Jason's eyes locked on mine. You think you're protecting that baby? You've just made sure it'll grow up with nothing. Better nothing than your poison. The words came from somewhere deep inside, somewhere that had been silent too long. Better alone than raised by a liar and a thief. He reached for me, but another voice cut through the tension. Touch her, and it's assault charges on top of fraud. Henry Carter stood in the doorway, badge in hand. Your choice, Blake. Jason's arm dropped. He looked between us, calculating odds like he always did. Finally, he stepped back. You'll regret this, he said softly. Both of you. After he left, my legs gave out. I sank into a chair, trembling. Are you all right? Mother's hand was cool on my forehead. No. I looked up at Henry. But I will be. What happens now? Now? Henry sat across from me. Now we build a case. Every victim, every fraudulent investment, every false promise. It won't be easy. Some women won't want to come forward. But some will. I thought of Lily, of her smeared mascara and shaking hands. Some of us are tired of being victims. It could take months, Henry warned. Maybe years. I pressed my hand against my growing belly, feeling the flutter of movement. Then we better get started. This baby deserves to be born into a world where their father can't hurt anyone else. Mother squeezed my shoulder. We'll help. Whatever you need. I nodded, my mind already racing ahead. Jason thought he'd left me with nothing. But he'd given me something invaluable, a purpose. A mission. And I would see it through, not just for my child, but for every woman who'd trusted him and lost everything. The game wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about justice. And justice, I was learning, was a dish best served methodically. The contractions started during a meeting with Henry and the prosecutor. 38 weeks pregnant, and my son chose this moment to make his entrance. Perfect timing, just like his father. We need to get you to the hospital, Henry said, already reaching for his keys. I gripped the edge of the conference table. Not yet. Finish telling me about the offshore accounts. The prosecutor, Sarah Chen, exchanged looks with Henry. The accounts can wait. No. Another contraction hit, stronger this time. Jason's hearing is tomorrow. I need to know everything. You need to have this baby, Henry countered. The hearing will proceed whether you're there or not. A sharp knock interrupted us. The door opened, revealing Lily, her face pale. He's gone. The room went silent. My contraction forgotten, I straightened. What do you mean, gone? Jason. Lily's voice cracked. He emptied our joint accounts this morning. Left a note saying he was sorry, that he never meant to hurt anyone. She laughed bitterly. As if that makes it better. The prosecutor shuffled through her papers. The court order. Doesn't matter. Lily tossed her phone onto the table. He's already out of the country. Dubai, probably. He always talked about Dubai. Another contraction ripped through me, this one bringing me to my knees. Through the haze of pain, I heard voices arguing, phones ringing, plans unraveling. Hospital, I gasped. Now. The next hours blurred together. Contractions, monitors beeping, nurses coming and going. My parents arrived, then Henry, then more lawyers. Through it all, one thought kept circling: Jason had won. Again. Push, the doctor ordered, and I did, channeling all my rage and frustration into bringing my son into the world. At 3:47 a.m., Oliver Thomas Blake announced his arrival with a cry that seemed to shake the walls. They placed him on my chest, this tiny person who'd been my anchor through the storm, and everything else fell away. Hello, little one, I whispered. I've been waiting for you. Hours later, when the room had quieted and my parents had gone home to rest, Henry appeared in the doorway. You should be resting, he said, but his expression told me there was news. Tell me. He sat heavily in the visitor's chair. Interpol flagged his passport in Singapore. He's moving money through shell companies, trying to stay ahead of the freeze orders. I looked down at Oliver, peaceful in his hospital bassinet. He planned this all along. The hearing, the negotiations, it was just buying time. Yes. Henry's voice softened. I'm sorry, Fiona. We thought we had him cornered. Don't apologize. I touched Oliver's tiny hand, marveling at his perfect fingers. We'll find him. It could take years. International cases. Then it takes years. Something shifted inside me, a resolve hardening into certainty. He thinks having a baby means I'll give up, that I'll be too busy with diapers and midnight feedings to pursue him. Won't you be? I met Henry's gaze. Every night when I feed my son, I'll be planning. Every diaper I change will remind me why I'm fighting. And one day, when Oliver's old enough to understand, I'll tell him how his father tried to steal his future, and how we got it back. Henry studied me for a long moment. This isn't just about the money anymore, is it? It never was. I watched Oliver's chest rise and fall with his tiny breaths. It's about justice. For every woman he betrayed, every child he abandoned. He doesn't get to win just because he ran. What do you need from me? Everything you know about international finance law. I smiled, feeling stronger than I had in months. And maybe some coffee. We have work to do. Henry nodded, understanding dawning in his eyes. I'll make some calls. As he left, I lifted Oliver into my arms. Your father thinks he's escaped, little one. But he doesn't understand what he's created. A mother's love isn't just soft and gentle, it's fierce and relentless. And I promise you this, he will answer for what he's done. Not just to me, but to everyone he's hurt. Oliver yawned, oblivious to the weight of the moment. But I felt it, this turning point where grief transformed into purpose. Jason had given me one final gift, a reason to never stop fighting. The game wasn't over. It had barely begun. 20 years vanished in an instant when I saw him across the restaurant. Jason hadn't aged well, his hair had grayed at the temples, and his once athletic frame had softened. But that smile, that practiced charm as he worked the room, hadn't changed at all. Mom? Oliver's voice pulled me back. My son, our son, sat across from me, celebrating his 20th birthday in the same restaurant where Jason had proposed all those years ago. You look like you've seen a ghost. Before I could respond, Jason turned. Our eyes met, and the world stopped spinning. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by something else, calculation. Always calculating. He started walking toward our table. Oliver, I said quietly, whatever happens next, remember that I love you. Mom, what? Well. Jason's voice was exactly as I remembered. Fiona Blake. You look comfortable. I felt Oliver tense beside me. And you look like a man who's been running for 20 years. Jason's smile didn't waver. Is this him? Is this my boy? I'm not your anything. Oliver's voice carried the same steel I'd heard in my own all those years ago. And this is a private dinner. Can't a father want to know his son? Jason pulled up a chair uninvited. We have so much to catch up on. Like the $2 million you stole? I kept my voice steady. Or the other families you destroyed? His expression hardened. Still bitter, Fiona? After all these years? Not bitter. I met his gaze. Just patient. Understanding dawned in his eyes. He glanced around the restaurant, probably noting the exits. You knew I'd be here. This restaurant's new owner is an interesting woman. I smiled. Lily sends her regards. Jason's charm cracked. You've been tracking me. For 20 years. Oliver's voice was cold. Every shell company, every false identity. Did you really think Mom would just give up? Henry Carter's been teaching him well, I added. He has quite a talent for financial forensics. Jason stood abruptly, but two men in suits appeared at his shoulders. Sir, one said quietly, please come with us. You can't prove anything. Jason's voice shook slightly. It's been too long. The statute of limitations doesn't apply to ongoing fraud. Oliver stood, and I saw Jason register how tall his son had grown, how confident he was. Which you've been committing across 3 continents. Did you think Dubai would protect you forever? This is what you taught him? Jason spat at me. To betray his own father? No. I stood too, feeling stronger than I had in years. I taught him about justice. About consequences. About being a man who keeps his promises. Mom taught me everything you didn't. Oliver's words cut like knives. Including how to wait for the right moment. The agents led Jason away, his protests fading into the murmur of the restaurant. I sank back into my chair, 20 years of tension draining away. Are you okay? Oliver touched my hand. I thought I'd feel different. I watched through the window as they put Jason in a car. More satisfied, maybe. Or vindicated. What do you feel? Tired. I turned back to my son, my brilliant, compassionate son who'd grown up without a father but never without love. And a little sad. For him, mostly. He never knew what he gave up. His choice. Oliver squeezed my hand. Not yours. My phone buzzed, a message from Henry. More of Jason's victims were coming forward, encouraged by his arrest. The house of cards was finally falling. Happy birthday, sweetheart. I managed a smile. I'm sorry it turned out like this. Don't be. Oliver's expression was serious. This was the best gift you could have given me. Not revenge, justice. For all of us. I watched my son, so different from his father, so much more than I'd ever dreamed possible, and felt the weight of 2 decades begin to lift. Jason was finally facing consequences, but that wasn't what mattered most. What mattered was sitting across from me, strong and whole despite everything. The game was ending, but something else was beginning. Something that felt a lot like freedom. Let's order dessert, I said. We have a lot to celebrate. The prison visiting room smelled of disinfectant and desperation. Jason sat across from me, his orange jumpsuit a jarring contrast to the designer suits he'd once worn. 3 weeks in custody had stripped away his polish, leaving something raw and unfamiliar beneath. "You're my last hope, Fiona." His voice cracked. "They're talking 20 years. 20 years of my life, gone. Like the 20 years you stole from others?" I kept my voice neutral, watching his hands fidget on the table. "I can make it right." He leaned forward, that old charm struggling to surface. "I know where the money is. All of it. Help me make a deal, and everyone gets paid back. Everyone except Oliver." He flinched. "I never meant to get caught," I finished. "Or to have your son help bring you down. He's my son too." Anger flashed across his face. "You turned him against me." "No, Jason. You did that yourself." I pulled out a folder, copies of documents Lily had gathered over years. "Just like you did with every other family you destroyed." His eyes fixed on the folder. "Lily gave you those?" "She's been collecting evidence since before your wedding." "Smart woman." I smiled slightly. "She learned from your previous wives." Previous, understanding dawned in his eyes. "Sarah Chen. The prosecutor. Your second wife. Though you never actually divorced her before marrying Lily, did you?" I laid out photos, Jason with different women, different names. Different lives. Henry helped us find them all. 7 marriages, Jason. 7 families. It wasn't personal. Sweat beaded on his forehead. It was business. Investment opportunities. Tell that to the children. I pushed forward another photo, a group shot of kids ranging from teenagers to toddlers. "Your children, Jason. All of them growing up without a father." He shoved back from the table. "What do you want from me?" "Nothing." The word felt like freedom. "I'm here because you asked to see me. Because you thought you could manipulate me one last time. Then why come?" His mask cracked completely, showing genuine confusion. "To show you what you threw away." I stood, gathering the photos. Oliver graduates law school next month. Top of his class. He's already been offered a position with the Financial Crimes Unit. Following in Henry's footsteps. Jason sneered. "Playing hero? Being the man you never were." I met his gaze. "The other kids? They're thriving too. Sarah's daughter is a doctor. Amanda's twins just started college. They all grew up strong, Jason. Not because of you, but because of the mothers who loved them enough to stay." Is that supposed to make me feel guilty? No. I headed for the door, then paused. It's supposed to make you understand what real wealth is. And why you'll always be poor. Fiona. His voice stopped me. "I did love you. In the beginning." I turned back one last time. "No, Jason. You loved what I could give you. There's a difference." "What happens now?" "Now?" I thought of Oliver, of the family we'd built without Jason. "Now you face justice. Not just legal justice, but the kind that comes from knowing your son chose to be everything you're not. He'll regret it." Jason's final attempt at control. "One day, he'll understand why I did what I did." "No." I smiled, feeling decades of weight lift from my shoulders. "He already understands. That's why he helped stop you." As I left the prison, my phone buzzed. A message from Oliver: "Mom, dinner at Grandma and Grandpa's tonight. Henry and Lily are coming too. Family meeting about the foundation." The foundation, Oliver's idea to help families affected by financial fraud. Born from our pain, but growing into something beautiful. Something healing. I texted back, "On my way. Love you." The game was truly over now. Jason would spend years in prison, but we'd spend them building something he could never understand, a legacy of justice, compassion, and unbreakable family bonds. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's living well, loving deeply, and letting go of the ghosts that once haunted us. I got in my car and headed home, toward the family that had chosen to stay, to fight, to love. Toward the future we'd built from the ashes of Jason's betrayal. And I didn't look back once. My parents' backyard glowed with string lights, the summer evening perfect for celebrating Oliver's law school graduation. The faces around the table had changed over the years. Henry's hair had gone completely white, Lily had found peace in her new life. And my parents moved a bit slower, but the love remained constant. Oliver stood at the head of the table, champagne glass in hand. The Blake Carter Foundation helped its 100th family this week. Applause rippled through our gathering. I watched my son, so tall, so sure of himself, and saw echoes of the baby I'd once promised to protect. But that's not why I called everyone together tonight. He reached into his pocket, producing an envelope. This came from the prison today. The air stilled. Henry leaned forward. Jason? He's dying. Oliver's voice stayed steady. Cancer. He wants to make amends, tell the truth about everything. After all this time? Lily's hand trembled as she reached for her water glass. He claims he has records of other victims we never found. Oliver met my eyes. He'll only talk to me. The old anger stirred, but it felt distant now, like thunder from a storm that had long passed. What are you thinking? I'm thinking about that first family we helped. Oliver sat beside me. Remember? The mother with 3 kids, living in her car after her husband emptied their accounts? I nodded. How could I forget? She'd reminded me so much of myself. We gave her justice, but more importantly, we gave her hope. He spread the foundation's latest reports across the table. Every person we've helped is another chain broken, another cycle ended. And now Jason wants to help break more chains? Henry's skepticism was clear. I don't think he wants to help anyone. Oliver's smile held a wisdom beyond his years. I think he wants to die feeling less guilty. But his motives don't matter, the truth does. My mother reached across the table, squeezing my hand. What do you think, sweetheart? I looked around at my family, not bound by blood or law, but by choice and love. At Henry, who'd taught Oliver to fight injustice with intelligence rather than anger. At Lily, who'd turned her pain into purpose. At my parents, whose unwavering support had given me strength when I had none. I think, I said slowly, that revenge was never the point. Justice was never about punishing Jason, it was about helping others heal. Oliver nodded. That's why I'm going to see him. Not for him, but for the families who still need answers. We'll go with you, Henry said, and Lily nodded in agreement. No. Oliver's voice was gentle but firm. I need to do this alone. Mom taught me that strength isn't about carrying burdens alone, but sometimes we have to face our ghosts by ourselves. I touched the empty chair beside me, the one we'd started leaving empty at family gatherings, not for Jason, but as a reminder of why we did this work. Your father gave us an unexpected gift, Oliver. He showed us what family isn't, so we could build what it should be. To family, my father raised his glass, in all its forms. As glasses clinked and conversation resumed, Oliver pulled me aside. Are you really okay with this, Mom? I looked at my son, this remarkable man who'd taken our pain and transformed it into purpose. I'm more than okay. I'm proud. Not because you're facing Jason, but because you're doing it for the right reasons. I learned from the best. He hugged me, and for a moment I felt the echo of that tiny baby I'd once promised to protect. The string lights swayed in the evening breeze, casting shifting shadows across our gathering. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new stories of betrayal to unravel, new families to help. But tonight, in this garden filled with love and laughter, I finally understood. sometimes the greatest victory isn't in winning the game, but in changing its rules entirely. And we had done exactly that.
Being with you just makes me poorer, so I want a divorce. You can have the kid, just pay me $80,000. When I got home, my husband, Ned, suddenly brought up divorce. Up until today, I had been very devoted to supporting him. Unforgivable. I will definitely make him regret this. Without showing my feelings, I coldly responded to him. Fine. My casual response must have shaken Ned. But it's too late. From now on, you're going to see hell. My name is Sandra Irving. I'm a 25-year-old front desk clerk at a hotel. Last year, I married Ned, my boss at the time. I became pregnant at the beginning of this year and left the company. The workplace I left was warm and comfortable to the very end, celebrated by everyone. Since then, I have been a full-time housewife, working hard on housework and childcare. Our newborn son cries a lot at night and doesn't drink well. Despite the chaos of having a child for the first time, Ned had been devotedly supportive. However, Ned suddenly changed one day. He used to be proactive with household chores and took care of the child. But his recent behavior has been strange. I've got a work dinner tonight, so I won't need dinner. That's a lot, huh? I understand for a sales job, but it's tough when it's you all the time. You gotta do what you gotta do. I'm off. There were never weekly drinking parties when I was working. Especially since he was like the head of the restaurant department. Such meetings were supposed to be during working hours. It was unheard of him to go to drinking parties after work, even when our son was born. But recently, this lifestyle has become the norm. I convinced myself that things must have changed since my time. However, that led to suspicions due to Ned's certain behavior. I'm home. Is the bath ready? Welcome back. It's ready. Ned seemed unusually happy when he returned from the drinking party, and strangely sober. Which made me question his expression. Ned, you're usually not good with alcohol, but you seem fine today.
Oh, yeah.
Didn't drink much. Ned appeared greatly disturbed by my casual remark. Another surprise was nearby him. It wasn't the smell of alcohol but the scent of women's perfume. Usually, he would have a drink with snacks as soon as he got home, but today was different. He immediately asked for a bath. At that moment, a sense of discomfort arose in me. You usually come home drunk after being forced to drink so much? Today the sales manager wasn't there next to me. Thanks to that. Don't sweat the small stuff. Just worry about your chores. People often express lies through negative words and speed up their speech without realizing it. Ned was particularly prone to taking a domineering attitude. Hearing his words, I instantly sensed his guilt. Despite this, he continued to go to drinking parties. And there were times when he came home early in the morning. I was convinced that Ned is keeping something from me. When he returned home early one morning and left for work without sleeping. This is Ned's phone. He had unusually left his phone on the sofa, and I found it. While holding the phone and contemplating whether to bring it to him, Ned returned home. Seeing me with his phone, he snatched it back with a look of disgust. What are you doing touching someone else's phone? Huh? I was just wondering whether to bring it to you since you left it here. Shut up. You didn't look, did you? While he quickly put the phone in his chest pocket, he glared at me with a look of contempt. The way he looked at me made me more certain. He thought it would be bad if I saw what I shouldn't see. This might be the moment, I thought. But if it's another woman, it would be bad to confront him now and have him delete the evidence. I haven't looked. I wouldn't stoop so low. What's with that tone? Who do you think is feeding you? Know your place. Trying to intimidate with power, Ned slammed his bag onto the table. He was trying to dominate me through force. If I were alone, I would talk back and leave the house right now. But I can't do that with my precious son here. Who knows what could happen? I need to endure. Endure and expose Ned's wrongdoing. I clenched my fists hard, desperately trying to control my anger with pain. As if sensing my feelings, our son, who was sleeping in another room, woke up and realized I wasn't there. I could hear his desperate cries calling for me. Shut him up already. His irritable shout made me flinch, and I could almost see him raising his fist. I shrank from his menacing look. How did our relationship come to this? At the beginning of our marriage, there was nothing like this. But upon reflection, maybe I was just blind. His behavior had always hinted at something like this. In the early days of our marriage, Ned insisted on meticulous household rules. Clean the toilet after every use, never leave dishes in the sink. He demanded that meals only be eaten after all the dishes were washed. And the sink was scrubbed clean. I was expected to clean up after every meal Ned ate and take care of all the laundry. If his shoes were dirty, it was up to me to notice and clean them without being asked. I remember these directives led to arguments between us, as I was overwhelmed by the constant demands. The amount of housework has increased compared to when I lived at my parents' house. And on top of that, there's childcare. Ned, who initially helped out, is now acting like this. Why did I get married in the first place? I've reached my limit in this environment, where I feel like I'm doing more work than a housemaid. Especially with his treatment now. I've reached my breaking point and want to divorce him. I want to grab my son and flee this house right now. It was during these thoughts that a turning point arrived. Sandra, what is this? It was about a month after I started digging into Ned's affairs. I had just put my son to sleep and was finally enjoying some alone time when Ned confronted me with a picture. It was a snapshot of a pleasant coffee time with a former colleague from my previous job. What are you doing so leisurely outside while I'm at work? I finished the housework and went out for some coffee to stretch my legs. What's wrong with that? Where do you get the money for this? You've been wasting the living expenses I give you. Ned mistakenly believed that I had misused the living expenses on non-essential things. Without listening to my side, he started yelling loudly. At that moment, our son, who was supposed to be sleeping, woke up and began to cry loudly. Shut up. Stop wailing. Despite the fact that our son was crying in another room, Ned went out of his way to enter the room and scold him. At that moment, feeling the need to protect my son, I stood in front of the door in a defiant stance, determined not to let him pass. Move it. No, I won't move. Do you even realize what you're trying to do? He's just a newborn baby. It's insane to yell at such a small child. Over the past few days, it seemed my eyes had been opened. Staying with this man would bring no happy future for either me or my son. I wanted to leave right away. I had enough reasons to leave. All that was left was to gather the funds to do so. I still couldn't raise my son alone. First, I needed to find a job. I had to look for one discreetly, not at my previous workplace. As I was thinking this, Ned forcefully pushed me aside, opened the door violently, and left it open as he coldly spoke. Get out. I don't need a wife who can't show respect to her husband. Pack your things and leave now. Wait, what are you saying? Don't be unreasonable. Just leave. You're an eyesore, you maggot. After using my money without permission and that arrogant tone. Who do you think you are? If you're going to talk back like that, I don't need you anymore. Take the kid and just disappear. Ned hurled insults at me and, while shoving our crying son and my belongings at me, he threw us out the front door. He locked the door, making it completely impossible for me to return home. I was left wandering the streets with my newborn son. In the quiet back alley late at night, only my son's sad cries echoed. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Because I was such a failure as a parent. I'm really sorry for putting you through this hardship." Fearing a disturbance report from the neighbors, I quickly moved to a park. Holding my son tightly to keep him warm, ensuring he felt my presence. As I apologized over and over, determined to protect him at all costs. I planned to seek help from the city office or somewhere else once the sun rose. Just then, as if to add insult to injury, it began to rain. Without an umbrella, I held my son close to shield him from the rain. And tears fell just like the raindrops. If only I had seen through Ned sooner and divorced him before our child was born. If I had been a stronger woman, none of this would have happened. Despairing over my helpless situation, an elderly man appeared. "What's wrong? Why are you here at this time?" Despite it being past 3 a.m., a well-dressed elderly man offered his umbrella to shelter me and my son. "What happened to bring you and such a small child out here?" The man, likely living in the grand house across the park, had heard the continuous crying of my son and came to check on us. Although it was suspicious to be approached by someone at such an hour, for some reason, I felt a sense of nostalgia towards the elderly man. As I shared the recent distressing events, he didn't say a word but covered my head with his towel and gently dried my hair. "Come to my house. I have female servants who can help care for the baby. It's too cruel to spend the night here." Moved by his kind tone and compassion, my tears flowed endlessly. Accepting his invitation, I followed him with my sobbing son into his home, where a shocking truth would soon be revealed. "Leave the rest to me." Nodding at his words, I decided to rest for the time being. His servants were kind and gladly took care of my son. Thanks to them, I was able to sleep soundly for the first time in a long while, waking up only in the afternoon. A female servant noticed my awakening and mentioned that my phone had been ringing a lot. She had refrained from waking me, considering my deep sleep. Grateful for their kindness, I checked the missed calls, unsurprisingly all from Ned. Likely, he couldn't prepare breakfast without me and was demanding I return immediately. His calls were typical of a hopeless husband, making me regret ever seeing anything good in him. Though I didn't want to return, ignoring him could lead to trouble with the police. Deciding to speak with Ned, I took my son and headed home once more. Thus began the fierce battle between me and Ned. "You. Where have you been wandering around until now? Not preparing breakfast, leaving the house a mess. After such a stupid argument yesterday. You stubbornly didn't come home all night." I nearly snapped back, but I suppressed the urge to retaliate. How am I supposed to enter when the door is locked? And how would I know about the lack of breakfast? If you regret not being able to prepare it yourself, you shouldn't have driven me away. You're the smart one, aren't you? He always belittled me. A smart person like Ned would have avoided such a situation altogether. But in the end, he was the one in trouble. He should realize it's all his own doing. With that in mind, I goaded him by throwing his words back at him, and I saw his temples twitch. I've had it. I can't do this anymore. His anger must have reached its peak. I don't know when he prepared it. But Ned pulled a piece of paper from his room and slammed it on the living room table. We're getting a divorce. I never want to see your face again. There, on the table, lay the divorce papers with Ned's name on them. He must have thought I would panic upon seeing it. His face, expecting an apology, revealed his inner thoughts. But I wasn't going to play into his hands. I grabbed a pen from a nearby shelf and signed without hesitation. Understood. You're unusually compliant. With no job and no parents, you have nowhere to go. What are you going to do now? Despite his outward bravado, I could see the cold sweat on his forehead. The twitching corners of his mouth, and the look on his face said it all. Such a foolish man. While inwardly despising him, I quickly gathered my remaining belongings. Silent, huh? Well, fine. This feels refreshing. As I ignored his words and packed, Ned, seemingly carefree, delivered the final blow. Being with you just makes me poorer, so I want a divorce. You can have the kid, just pay me $80,000. Perhaps because I wasn't visibly shaken, Ned demanded a reckless amount of money. I was utterly astounded internally. He was trying to shake me with money, to rile me up. If we got into an argument, he could dominate the conversation and manipulate me. Then he would impose even more restrictions on me, making my life miserable while he freely enjoyed himself. Reading through Ned's transparent thoughts, I turned around with a broad smile and quickly responded. Fine. Hearing this, Ned visibly faltered and panicked. Do you understand? $80,000. $80,000. There's no way you can come up with that kind of money. Is that all you want to say? I'll transfer it by the end of the month. You handle the rest.
Bye.
And so, our divorce was finalized. As Ned instructed, I transferred a large sum of $80,000 to his account. I was aware of his affair and had gathered evidence. But I chose not to demand compensation from him. Because from now on, I plan to show him a hell that money can't redeem. 2 weeks later, when I woke up in the morning, my phone was bombarded with calls from Ned. It was finally happening. Ned would surely call again. Sure enough, he called. I didn't answer the first time, and on the second call, I hung up shortly after picking up. On the third call, I finally answered, and Ned, his voice raised and speaking rapidly, blurted out. You. What do you think you're doing? Are you messing with me? If I had answered on the first call, I could have kept the conversation calm and controlled. My actions on the second call were meant to frustrate him. Maintaining his irritation was essential. If he remained rational, my plan would be jeopardized. I needed to provoke his short temper and make him lose his cool. And on the third call, I deliberately chose not to start speaking. To keep the upper hand, I needed to keep him agitated. You're always so loud. I can adjust the volume on my phone, so there's no need to yell. What do you want? I'm quite busy, you know. While saying this, I elegantly sipped my coffee and flipped through a magazine. Busy was a lie. I was enjoying a leisurely day off with my son. Making it seem like I was too engaged in real life to bother with him was merely part of my rhetoric. What have you done? What are you talking about? I haven't done anything. Such a lie. In truth, I had taken everything from Ned. His wife, his job, his money, his family. I had stripped him of everything. That's a lie. Only you could have done such a thing. Give me back everything. You liar. Ned was crying bitterly over the phone. His pained cries almost amusing to me, and I laughed to myself. Why don't you try explaining what I did? I seem to have a bad memory these days. I can't remember a thing. Unlike him, destined for hell, I continued to enjoy my magazine and coffee time. He spoke to me in a fading voice, revealing shocking news. Immediately after our divorce, Ned remarried his current wife. Of course, I knew she had been his affair partner while he was married to me. It also turned out she was the daughter of a president of a client company. Apparently, Ned had concealed the fact that he was married. And on the day he proposed divorce, it was revealed that she was pregnant. Ned hurriedly divorced me and remarried her, because she was connected to the largest contract among his clients. Thus, in a rush, Ned pushed for the divorce. His plan to divorce me succeeded, but that was just the beginning of his tragedy. First, he was kicked out of his house by his wife today. And she demanded a divorce because she found out about his previous marriage. Upon learning that I also have a child, she became furious. As she demanded compensation and announced the divorce, Ned panicked and lashed out at her. His rage was so severe that even his parents tried to intervene. He caused both mental and physical distress to his wife, leading her to report the situation at his workplace. The hotel he worked at decided they couldn't contract with someone like him and fired him. It was as if they clearly chose their business partners over him, and in one day, he lost both his wife and his job. Additionally, he had to use the entire $80,000 he received from me to pay for compensation and damages to the company, leaving him penniless. The damages to the company were so great that even $80,000 was not enough, and he had to use up all his savings. How did she know about my previous marriage? The only one who would do something like that is you. You stole my happiness. Ned screamed in frustration. I closed the magazine I was reading and decided to face him directly. His utter lack of remorse infuriated me. I had intended to just listen to him and hang up. But his continued refusal to reflect on his misdeeds was unbearable. I couldn't stand it. Stole your happiness? It's just karma. You cheated while you were with me, you were abusive to your wife leading to your divorce. And you got fired from your job, all because of your own actions. What did you say? You are nothing, and you dare to preach to me like that? You must be living a busy life because you can't support a kid on your own. This is the punishment for dumping me. He must have mistaken that I was working from morning to night. Holding up the magazine in front of me, I scorned him inwardly while politely delivering a sarcastic remark. I was busy reading a beauty magazine until just now, but I've finished. Now I'm thinking about having my second cup of coffee and maybe doing some knitting. What? How is that busy? Are you mocking me? Even over the phone, I could imagine him turning red and steaming like an octopus. My cheerful laughter probably irritated him even more. His shouting didn't stop. But even that was pleasant to me. I had been unable to say anything to him before, but now I was easily manipulating him. The unreachable environment where he could only shout was frustrating for him. And he demanded to see me immediately. Where are you? A phone call isn't enough. I'm coming over to your house right now. Sandra Irving, you're welcome to come, but you'll be turned away. I'll let the servants know that you're an outsider and absolutely not allowed in. Servants? Yes. I'm currently living in a mansion with my father. I switched to a video call to show him the surprising scene. Chairman. Displayed on the screen was the elderly man who had helped me. And he was the chairman of his workplace. He was my father. Hello, Ned. Nice to meet you, perhaps? I'm Sandra's father. What? Huh? Father? How come? Chairman, I don't understand at all. Ned, who had been told I had no father, was visibly shaken. Even though I couldn't see his face, I could imagine his bewildered expression. Actually, I was divorced from Sandra's mother when she was pregnant with her. My parents had a romance despite their different social statuses. My father was the heir to a financial conglomerate, and my mother was a commoner, the child of a salaryman and an office lady. Grandmother disapproved of their marriage. and the entire family opposed it so vehemently that my father was disowned and lost all support. Seeing this, my mother broke up with him and gave birth to me in a state where only recognition from the father was allowed. To avoid tarnishing the family name, they did not marry. But he recognized the child and sent child support every month. Unfortunately, mother passed away quite some time ago. I always wanted to meet Sandra and her family, but she was taught that I didn't exist in this world. It would have been too cruel to tell such a young child about her father's situation. Last year, my mother passed away. She asked my father to look after me, and it seems he cared for me from afar. I knew about your marriage because I was at the company. But that day, I was really surprised to see Sandra soaking wet in front of the house. You were being taken care of by the chairman that day? Yes. My father helped us when we were drenched. As I glared at him with a stern look, my father gently put his arm around my back and supported me. You said I had no economic power, didn't you? Unfortunately for you. I have inherited my father's company, and now my total assets are $13 million. I'm not petty enough to fuss over $80,000. That was all. The reason I wasn't shaken by the large sum of $80,000 that day was because my father had proposed this plan when he rescued us. That woman in the photo is the daughter of someone I know. I'll explain the situation to her partner, and they will divorce him soon. They are intelligent people, I think they will understand. Don't worry about any financial issues, I'll take care of everything. Sandra, you should prioritize yourself and your child. You are a precious keepsake from your mother. I won't let you be unhappy. Be at ease. With these words from my father, I easily agreed to the divorce. The amount demanded was transferred without hesitation. So, all this time, you were innocently manipulated by us. Have you finally understood, you fool? It's laughable that you think you're so smart. I snorted in derision, and he didn't respond, seemingly crestfallen. It was over. I truly felt it was hopeless, and there was nothing else to do but to back down. Thus, our fierce dispute came to an end. Ned never interfered with us again. Years later, my son became an elementary school student. Surrounded by my father and son, I led a fulfilling life, both professionally and personally. The servants were kind to us, and I finally felt I had captured the warmth of a family.
The diamond on my finger caught the light, sending sparkles dancing across the pristine white tablecloth. I couldn't help but smile, twisting the ring back and forth, still not quite believing it was there. After 10 years, Michael had finally proposed. Emily, dear, you're positively glowing. Eleanor, my soon-to-be mother-in-law, reached across the table and patted my hand. I'm so thrilled Michael finally popped the question. Lord knows I've been dropping hints for years. I laughed, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Trust me, Eleanor, I've been dropping hints too. But you know Michael, always moving at his own pace. Eleanor's smile faltered for just a moment, so quickly I almost missed it. She took a sip of her tea, her perfectly manicured nails clinking against the delicate china. Yes, well, that's my Michael. Always been a bit stubborn. Something in her tone made me pause. Is everything all right, Eleanor? She waved her hand dismissively. Oh, of course, dear. It's just... She leaned in, lowering her voice. There's something you should know about our family. Something I probably should have told you years ago. My heart started to race. What is it? Eleanor glanced around the crowded restaurant as if checking for eavesdroppers. It's about Michael's father. The story he's told you, well, it's not entirely true. I frowned, confused. What do you mean? Michael said his father died when he was young. That's what Michael believes, Eleanor said, her voice barely above a whisper. But the truth is, his father left us, abandoned us when Michael was just a baby. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. What? But? Why would Michael lie about that? Eleanor's eyes filled with tears. He doesn't know, Emily. I told him his father died. I couldn't bear for him to know the truth. My mind was reeling. How could Michael not know something so fundamental about his own life? And why had Eleanor kept this secret for so long? Before I could ask any more questions, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Michael. "Where are you? Thought we were meeting at 2?" I glanced at my watch and cursed under my breath. "I'm so sorry, Eleanor. I completely lost track of time. I'm supposed to be meeting Michael to look at venues." Eleanor nodded, composing herself quickly. "Of course, dear. Go. We can talk more later." As I gathered my things, Eleanor grabbed my wrist. "Emily, please, don't say anything to Michael. Not yet. Let me be the one to tell him." I hesitated, torn between my loyalty to Michael and the pleading look in Eleanor's eyes. Finally, I nodded. "All right. But soon, okay? He deserves to know." Eleanor smiled gratefully. "Thank you, dear. You're going to make a wonderful addition to our family." As I hurried out of the restaurant, my mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. Joy at my engagement warred with the shock of Eleanor's revelation. How well did I really know the man I was about to marry? I spotted Michael waiting outside the first venue on our list, looking handsome as ever in his tailored suit. He grinned when he saw me, pulling me in for a kiss. "There's my beautiful fiancé," he said. "Ready to start planning our future?" I forced a smile, pushing down the guilt and confusion roiling in my stomach. "Of course, let's go." As we walked into the venue, hand in hand, I couldn't shake the feeling that our perfect love story was about to get a lot more complicated. I stared at my phone, my heart sinking as I read Michael's text. "Sorry, babe. Can't make it to the florist today. Work emergency." This was the third time in 2 weeks he'd canceled our wedding preparations. I sighed, tossing the phone onto the couch. The excitement of planning our big day was quickly turning into frustration and doubt. The doorbell rang, startling me out of my thoughts. I opened the door to find Eleanor standing there, a sympathetic smile on her face. "Emily, dear, I hope I'm not intruding, but I thought you might need some company today." I felt a rush of gratitude. "Eleanor, you're a lifesaver. Please, come in." As we settled in the living room with cups of tea, Eleanor asked, "So how are the wedding plans coming along?" I couldn't hold back anymore. The words tumbled out in a rush. "Honestly, they're not. Michael keeps canceling on me. It's like he doesn't even care about the wedding." Eleanor's face softened with concern. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm sure that's not true. Michael can be difficult sometimes, but he loves you." I nodded, not entirely convinced. "I know. It's just, ever since you told me about his father, I can't help but wonder what else I don't know about him." Eleanor reached out and squeezed my hand. "Emily, I'm so sorry. I never meant to cause trouble between you two. Perhaps I shouldn't have said anything." "No," I said firmly. "I'm glad you told me. I just wish Michael would open up to me more." We spent the next hour talking, Eleanor sharing stories about Michael's childhood that made me laugh and reminded me why I fell in love with him. By the time she left, I felt a little better, but the nagging doubt remained. That evening, Michael came home late, looking tired and distracted. "Hey," I said, trying to keep the accusation out of my voice. "How was your work emergency?" He barely glanced at me as he loosened his tie. Oh, yeah, just a client freaking out about nothing. You know how it is." I took a deep breath. "Michael, we need to talk about the wedding. You keep canceling our appointments, and I'm starting to feel like I'm planning this whole thing alone." He finally looked at me, his expression a mix of guilt and irritation. "Come on, Em. You know how busy I am at work. Can't you handle this stuff?" His dismissive tone sparked something in me. "This is our wedding, Michael. Not just mine. It should be important to both of us." Michael's face hardened. "Of course it's important to me. I just don't see why we need to make such a big deal out of every little detail." We argued back and forth, our voices rising until we were both shouting. Finally, Michael grabbed his keys. "I need some air," he snapped, slamming the door behind him. I collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down my face. How had we gone from the joy of our engagement to this in just a few short weeks? My phone buzzed with a text from Eleanor. "Checking in, hope everything's okay." Without thinking, I called her back. "Eleanor?" I choked out between sobs. "Can you come over? I really need someone to talk to." "Of course, dear," she said without hesitation. "I'll be right there." As I hung up, I felt a mix of relief and guilt. I should be talking to Michael, working things out with him, Instead, I was turning to his mother for comfort. But as I waited for Eleanor to arrive, I couldn't shake the feeling that she understood me better than Michael did right now, and that thought terrified me more than anything else. The clock on the nightstand glared at me, 2:37 a.m. I rolled over, the empty space beside me, a cold reminder of Michael's absence. This was the third night this week he'd stayed out late, claiming it was just innocent fun with the guys. "Bachelor's last hurrah," he'd said with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. I grabbed my phone, thumb hovering over Michael's name. No, I decided. I wouldn't be that person, constantly checking up on him. Instead, I opened my messages with Eleanor. "You awake?" I typed, then immediately regretted it. What kind of soon-to-be daughter-in-law texts her fiancé's mother in the middle of the night? To my surprise, a reply came almost instantly. "Can't sleep either? Want to talk?" Relief washed over me. "Michael's out again. I'm worried. Come over for breakfast tomorrow. We'll chat." The next morning, I found myself sitting at Eleanor's kitchen table, a steaming mug of coffee warming my hands. "I don't know what to do," I confessed. "It's like Michael's a different person lately." Eleanor's face was a mask of concern. "Has he said anything about his father?" I shook my head. "No, and I haven't brought it up. I'm scared it'll just make things worse." She reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Emily, dear, I'm so sorry. I never meant for my secret to cause such trouble. It's not your fault," I assured her, "but I can't help feeling like there's something Michael's not telling me." Just then, my phone buzzed. A text from Michael. "Where are you? Woke up and you were gone." I showed Eleanor the message, my frustration bubbling over. "He's one to talk. He didn't even come home last night." Eleanor's expression hardened. "This isn't like Michael. Something's not right." As I typed a reply, another text came through. This one made my blood run cold. "Who's Vanessa? Why does she keep calling you?" I stared at the screen, confusion and anger warring inside me. "Eleanor, I don't know any Vanessa. What is he talking about?" Eleanor's face paled. "Oh, dear, I think I might know who Vanessa is." My heart raced. "What? Who?" She hesitated, then said softly, "Vanessa is Michael's father's new wife." The room spun. "What? But you said his father left when Michael was a baby. How could he?" "I'm so sorry, Emily. There's more to the story than I told you. Michael's father, he's been trying to reconnect. I've been keeping his messages from Michael, trying to protect him." I felt like I couldn't breathe. "So all this time, Michael's father has been alive? Trying to contact him, and you've been hiding it?" Eleanor nodded, tears in her eyes. "I thought I was doing the right thing, but now, with Michael acting so strangely, I'm afraid he might have found out somehow." My mind raced. Could this explain Michael's recent behavior? The late nights, the secretiveness? Was he meeting with his long-lost father behind my back? "I have to go," I said, standing abruptly. "I need to talk to Michael." Eleanor grabbed my arm. "Emily, wait, please be careful. Michael, he can be like his father sometimes. Unpredictable when he's upset." Her words sent a chill down my spine. What exactly was she implying? As I drove home, my emotions swirled like a storm. Anger at Michael for lying, at Eleanor for keeping secrets, at myself for not seeing what was happening right in front of me. I pulled into our driveway, steeling myself for the confrontation to come. But as I opened the front door, I froze. The house was in chaos. Drawers pulled out, contents strewn across the floor. And there, in the middle of it all, stood Michael, a suitcase at his feet and a wild look in his eyes. "Michael?" I whispered, fear gripping my heart. "What's going on?" He turned to me, his face a mask of pain and fury. "I know everything, Emily. About my father, about the lies, and I know you've been talking to my mother behind my back." As he advanced towards me, I realized with terrifying clarity that I didn't know this man at all. And I had no idea what he was capable of. The morning of my wedding day dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the turmoil in my heart. I stood before the mirror, my white dress a ghostly reflection of the bride I was supposed to be. But all I could see were the shadows of doubt in my eyes. Last night's confrontation with Michael played on repeat in my mind. His anger, his accusations, the way he'd grabbed my arm when I tried to leave. In the end, he'd broken down, sobbing about his father's betrayal and begging for forgiveness. We'd talked for hours and he'd promised to be better, to be honest from now on. But as I adjusted my veil, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was making a terrible mistake. A soft knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. "Emily?" Eleanor's voice called. "Can I come in?" I hesitated, then called out, "Yes, come in." Eleanor entered, her eyes widening as she took in my appearance. "Oh, Emily, you look beautiful." I tried to smile, but it felt forced. "Thank you, Eleanor." She approached me, her face etched with concern. "Are you sure about this, dear? After everything that's happened?" I turned back to the mirror, avoiding her gaze. "Michael explained everything. He was just upset about his father. We're going to work through it together." Eleanor's reflection frowned. "Emily, I know my son. He's not always—" "Please," I interrupted, my voice sharper than I intended. "I've made my decision." Eleanor nodded, her eyes sad. "All right, dear. I just want you to be happy." As she left, I felt a pang of guilt. Eleanor had become such a source of comfort these past weeks, but she was still Michael's mother. I couldn't keep relying on her. The ceremony was a blur. I walked down the aisle, my eyes locked on Michael. He looked handsome in his tux, his smile bright and reassuring. But as I reached him, I noticed a slight tremor in his hands. We exchanged vows, Michael's voice steady as he promised love and fidelity. When it was my turn, I hesitated for just a moment, my doubts threatening to choke me. But I pushed through, the words leaving my lips even as my heart raced with uncertainty. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant declared, and Michael pulled me in for a kiss. The small crowd of family and friends applauded, but it sounded distant and muffled to my ears. At the reception, I plastered on a smile, accepting congratulations and posing for photos. But my eyes kept drifting to Michael, watching as he downed glass after glass of champagne. "Are you okay?" I whispered during a quiet moment. He grinned, his eyes slightly unfocused. "Never better, babe. We did it." As the night wore on, Michael became more boisterous, his laughter too loud, his movements unsteady. I saw Eleanor watching him with a mix of concern and resignation. Finally, as the last guests were leaving, Michael stumbled, nearly knocking over the gift table. I rushed to steady him, the smell of alcohol heavy on his breath. "I think it's time we went home," I said softly. He laughed, pulling me close. "Home? But the party's just getting started." I extricated myself from his grip, my patience wearing thin. "Michael, please, you're drunk." His face darkened. "Don't tell me what I am," he snapped, loud enough for the remaining guests to turn and stare. Embarrassment and anger flooded through me. This was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Instead, I felt like I was drowning. Eleanor appeared at my side, her hand on my arm. "Let me help you get him home," she offered quietly. I nodded, too tired to argue. As we maneuvered a protesting Michael into the car, Eleanor squeezed my hand. "Remember, Emily," she said, her voice low and urgent, "you always have a choice." As we drove away, Michael already passed out in the back seat, her words echoed in my mind. A choice. But what choice did I have now? I was married, for better or for worse. Looking at Michael's slumped form in the rearview mirror, I couldn't help but wonder, was this the worse I'd signed up for? And if so, how much worse could it get? I zipped up the last suitcase, my heart fluttering with a mix of excitement and apprehension. Our honeymoon to Bali was just hours away, a chance to escape the tension of the past few weeks and start our married life on a positive note. Maybe, just maybe, this trip would be the fresh start Michael and I desperately needed. As I wheeled the luggage to the front door, my phone rang. Michael's name flashed on the screen. "Hey, honey," I answered, trying to keep my voice light. "Are you on your way home? Our flight's in 4 hours." There was a pause, then Michael's voice came through, strained and hesitant. I have some bad news." My stomach dropped. "What is it?" "It's my mom," he said. "She's in the hospital, some kind of sudden illness. I'm with her now." I sank onto the couch, my mind reeling. "Oh my God, is she okay? What happened?" "The doctors aren't sure yet," Michael replied. "But I don't think we can go on our honeymoon, not with Mom like this." The words hit me like a physical blow. I closed my eyes, fighting back tears of frustration and disbelief. "Michael, are you sure? Can't your sister stay with her? We've been planning this trip for months." I know, he said, his voice rising. "But she's my mother, Emily. I can't just leave her like this." I took a deep breath, trying to calm the storm of emotions inside me. "Okay, I understand. Should I come to the hospital?" "No," Michael said quickly, then softened his tone. "No, that's okay. You stay home. I'll call you with updates." As I hung up, A nagging doubt crept into my mind. Something about Michael's tone, the way he'd refused my offer to come to the hospital, it didn't sit right. Before I could talk myself out of it, I dialed Eleanor's number. It rang several times before going to voicemail. I frowned, my unease growing. I paced the living room, my mind racing. What if Eleanor wasn't really sick? What if this was just another of Michael's lies? But why would he lie about this? Hours passed, and still no word from Michael. My calls went straight to voicemail. By evening, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed my keys and drove to the hospital. At the reception, I asked for Eleanor's room number, only to be met with confusion. "I'm sorry, ma'am," the nurse said, "but we don't have any patient by that name." My world tilted on its axis. That's impossible. My husband said she was admitted this morning." The nurse shook her head sympathetically. "I've been on shift all day. No, Eleanor has been admitted." I stumbled out of the hospital, my mind in chaos. Michael had lied. Again. But why? Where was he really? As if on cue, my phone buzzed with a text. It was from an unknown number, but the content made my blood run cold. "Your husband isn't who you think he is. Meet me at the Bluebird Cafe in an hour if you want the truth. V. Vanessa. Michael's father's new wife. The woman at the center of all this chaos." I stood in the hospital parking lot, the weight of decision heavy on my shoulders. Should I meet this mysterious Vanessa? Should I confront Michael? Or should I finally listen to that voice inside me that had been screaming for weeks, telling me to run? My fingers hovered over my phone, ready to reply to the text. In that moment, I knew my decision would change everything. There was no going back from here. With a deep breath, I typed my response, sealing my fate with 4 simple words. "I'll be there. Emily." As I got into my car, heading towards the unknown, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was more than just a ruined honeymoon. This was the beginning of the end of everything I thought I knew about my life, my marriage, and the man I thought I loved. My hands trembled as I pushed open the door to the Bluebird Cafe. The aroma of coffee and pastries did nothing to calm my frayed nerves. I scanned the room, my heart pounding, until I spotted a woman in the corner booth. She looked up, her eyes meeting mine, and I knew instantly this was Vanessa. As I slid into the seat across from her, she spoke first. "Emily, I presume? Thank you for coming." I nodded, studying her face. She was beautiful, with an air of confidence that made me feel instantly inadequate. "You said you had the truth about Michael. I'm listening." Vanessa sighed, pushing a manila folder across the table. "Everything you need to know is in here, but I warn you, it's not pretty." With shaking hands, I opened the folder. Photos spilled out. Michael with another woman, laughing, kissing. Dates stamped in the corner showed this wasn't just a one-time thing. It had been going on for months. "Who is she?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. "His secretary," Vanessa replied. "But that's not all. Keep reading." I flipped through documents, bank statements, emails, even a copy of a lease agreement. The pieces started to fall into place, each revelation more devastating than the last. "He's been embezzling from his company," I said, the words tasting bitter in my mouth. "And he's planning to leave the country?" Vanessa nodded grimly. "With her? The honeymoon cancellation? It was just an excuse. He's planning to disappear with the money and his mistress." I felt like I was drowning, gasping for air in a sea of betrayal. "But why? Why tell me all this?" "Because," Vanessa leaned forward, her eyes intense, "Michael isn't just hurting you. He's hurting everyone around him, including his father, my husband. We want to stop him before it's too late." Just then, my phone rang. Eleanor's name flashed on the screen. I answered, my voice shaky. "Eleanor?" "Emily, dear. I've been trying to reach you. Is everything all right? Michael said you two had to cancel your honeymoon because of me, but I'm perfectly fine." The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. I ended the call, my mind racing. "She's not sick. She never was." Vanessa's expression was a mix of sympathy and determination. "Now you know the truth. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" I stood up abruptly, a plan forming in my mind. I'm going to confront him. And then I'm going on that honeymoon, but not with Michael. Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" A grim smile played on my lips. "I'm taking Eleanor instead. Let's see how Michael likes it when his lies catch up to him." I rushed home, my mind a whirlwind of emotions and plans. As I burst through the door, I found Michael packing a suitcase. he exclaimed, surprise and guilt flashing across his face. I thought you'd be out. I was just packing for our canceled honeymoon? I interrupted, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Or maybe for your little getaway with your secretary. The color drained from Michael's face. What are you talking about? I threw the folder on the bed, photos and documents scattering. I know everything, Michael. The affair, the embezzlement, all of it. He lunged for the folder, but I was quicker. I snatched it back, backing away. Don't even think about it. It's over, Michael. I'm leaving and I'm taking everything we have. You'll have nothing left when I'm done. Michael's expression morphed from shock to anger. He advanced towards me, his fists clenched. You can't do this to me. I won't let you. Fear coursed through me, but I stood my ground. Try and stop me. I dare you. As Michael raised his hand, the front door burst open. Eleanor rushed in, her face a mask of fury. Michael Andrew Thompson, don't you dare touch her. Michael froze, his eyes darting between Eleanor and me. I took advantage of his confusion, grabbing my pre-packed suitcase. Come on, Eleanor, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. We have a plane to catch. As we walked out, leaving a stunned Michael behind, I felt a strange mix of pain, relief, and exhilaration. The life I thought I knew was over, but a new chapter was just beginning. And for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The moment I stepped through our front door, the tension in the air was palpable. Michael sat on the couch, his face a mask of barely contained anger. Our impromptu honeymoon with Eleanor had given me time to gather my thoughts, but nothing could have prepared me for this confrontation. Welcome home, Michael said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Did you enjoy your little vacation with my mother? I dropped my suitcase, steeling myself for the battle ahead. Cut the act, Michael. We both know what's really going on here. He stood, his eyes flashing dangerously. Oh, and what exactly is that, Emily? Your affair, for starters, I spat, my voice trembling with rage. And let's not forget the embezzlement. Did you really think you could just run away with your secretary and all that stolen money? Michael's face paled, then flushed with anger. Who told you? Was it Vanessa? That meddling bitch? It doesn't matter who told me, I shot back. What matters is that it's true, isn't it, Michael? He lunged forward, grabbing my arm. You don't understand. I had no choice. I wrenched away from him, my heart pounding. No choice? You had every choice. You chose to lie, to cheat, to steal. I did it for us, he yelled, his composure crumbling. For our future, I laughed bitterly. Our future. There is no our anymore, Michael. You destroyed that the moment you decided to betray me. Suddenly, the door burst open. Eleanor rushed in, followed by a man I'd never seen before. Michael's face drained of all color. Dad, he whispered, his voice small and uncertain. The man, Michael's father, stepped forward, his face a mix of sadness and determination. It's time to face the music, son. Michael's eyes darted between us all, like a cornered animal. You don't understand, any of you. I was going to make it right. I just needed more time. More time for what? I demanded. More lies? More betrayal? Eleanor moved to my side, her hand on my shoulder. Emily, dear, I'm so sorry. I never imagined Michael would go this far. As the reality of the situation crashed down around us, Michael's facade finally crumbled. He sank to his knees, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, he sobbed. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for it to go this far. But his words rang hollow in my ears. The man I thought I knew, the man I had loved for 10 years and married just weeks ago, was a stranger to me now. It's over, Michael, I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. I want a divorce. He looked up at me, his eyes pleading. Emily, please. We can work this out. I'll make it right, I swear. I shook my head, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. No, Michael. You've had your chances. I'm done. As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. 2 police officers entered, their faces grim. Michael Thompson? One of them said. We have a warrant for your arrest on charges of embezzlement and fraud. As they read him his rights and led him away in handcuffs, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, anger, and an overwhelming sense of loss. The life I thought I had, the future I had planned, it was all gone in an instant. Eleanor wrapped her arm around me as we watched Michael being driven away. What will you do now, dear? She asked softly. I took a deep breath, feeling both terrified and strangely liberated. I don't know, I admitted. But for the first time in a long time, I feel like I can finally start living for myself. As the police car disappeared around the corner, I realized that this wasn't just the end of my marriage. It was the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one filled with uncertainty, but also with the promise of freedom and self-discovery. The courthouse loomed before me, a monument to the end of my marriage and the beginning of my new life. I took a deep breath, steadying myself for what lay ahead. Eleanor's reassuring hand on my shoulder gave me the strength to push open the heavy doors. As we entered the courtroom, I saw Michael for the first time since his arrest. He looked haggard, his once confident demeanor replaced by a shell of a man. Our eyes met briefly, and I felt a twinge of something. Not love, not anymore, but a complex mixture of pity, anger, and regret. The proceedings began, a blur of legal jargon and formalities. I barely registered the words until the judge addressed me directly. "Mrs. Thompson, do you wish to make a statement before the court renders its decision?" I stood, my legs shaky but my resolve firm. "Yes, Your Honor." As I faced the courtroom, I saw not just Michael, but the faces of those whose lives he'd affected, his parents, our friends, even his former secretary, who looked as broken as I felt. 10 years ago, I fell in love with a man I thought I knew, I began, my voice growing stronger with each word. I built my life around him, dreamed of a future with him, but that man never truly existed. Instead, I married a stranger, a liar, a cheater, a thief. Michael flinched at my words, but I pressed on. I stand here today not just as a victim of his crimes, but as a survivor. I've lost my marriage, my trust, and the future I thought I'd have. But I've gained something too, the truth and the strength to face it. I turned to Michael, meeting his gaze head on. "I forgive you, Michael. Not for your sake, but for mine. I refuse to let your betrayal define me or my future." As I sat down, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The judge's verdict came swiftly. Michael was sentenced to prison for his financial crimes, and our divorce was granted. Outside the courthouse, Eleanor enveloped me in a tight hug. "I'm so proud of you, Emily," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. I pulled back, studying her face. "Eleanor, I don't know how to thank you for everything." She smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Oh, my dear, you don't need to thank me. Your family, no matter what." Those words, so simple yet so profound, broke something open inside me. I began to sob, releasing all the pain, anger, and fear I'd been holding on to for so long. Eleanor held me, her presence a balm to my battered soul. As my tears subsided, I realized something fundamental had shifted within me. The betrayal still hurt, the wounds were still raw, but I was no longer defined by them. I was more than Michael's ex-wife, more than a victim of his deceit. I was Emily, strong, resilient, and ready to write my own story. "What now?" Eleanor asked gently as we walked away from the courthouse. I took a deep breath, feeling the warm sun on my face and the promise of possibility in the air. Now I start over. I find out who I am without Michael, without the lies and the doubt. Eleanor squeezed my hand. "And you won't be alone. I'll be right here every step of the way." I smiled, feeling a genuine spark of hope for the first time in months. I know. And that means more to me than you could ever know. As we drove away, leaving behind the shattered remains of my old life, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead was uncertain, filled with challenges I couldn't yet imagine. But I was ready to face them, armed with the truth, supported by unexpected friendships, and fueled by a newfound belief in myself. The betrayal that had nearly broken me had also set me free. And in that freedom, I found the strength to embrace the unknown, to forgive without forgetting, and to love again, starting with myself. As Eleanor and I planned a celebratory dinner, I realized that sometimes the most beautiful relationships can bloom from the ashes of betrayal. My story wasn't over, it was just beginning. And this time I would be the author of my own happily ever after.